Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I will be talking about The Great Hunt Book 2 in the Wheel of Time, and man, do I absolutely love this book. Now, you'll hear me say that probably about most of the Wheel of Time books, but The Great Hunt really is a special book. Because it's book 2, so it's still very early. It still has that early feel. Our characters are young and inexperienced and only just starting to find out who they are and what part they're going to play in the bigger things to come. And yet it also really starts to expand the world. And that's something that you'll see if you're reading through with us for the Buddy Read for the first time. Each book will start to add more. We're going to meet new characters. We're going to go to new places. We're going to do all kinds of different things, and so that's always something that I enjoy about this book in particular. It's still got that early feel, it's got some of the adventures still, but we're really starting to expand out. So I'm going to start just kind of talking about this book in a non-spoiler fashion, and then I'll talk a little bit about some spoilers later on as well. So I will make sure that there are timestamps for whenever I'm going to actually talk about spoilers, so that if you haven't read it, you can still watch the first part, and then if you had to, get a little more after. So like I mentioned, this is the book that starts to branch out and really build the world a little bit more. And that's something that I really, really love about the Wheel of Time, and I've said it and a lot of people have heard it too, is there's so much world building, there's so many character point of views we get, we just learn so much and so in depth about a lot of parts of this world. But the thing is, sometimes people will say that, oh, the Wheel of Time, it seems, you know, really, really intimidating because there's just hundreds of named characters and there's so much going on. I'm like, well, eventually, but we start out pretty small and then work our way in. In the first book, we're really following one POV until our group splits off a little bit, and then we have a few, and we have a couple more in this book as well, but it kind of builds out slowly. We get more and more in there as we get further, and once you start to really get to know the characters more, you get to know the places, that's where we start to build off. So I've always really appreciated that. I do feel like Jordan does a great job of not just throwing you in the deep end, but building up to it and expanding each book so that every book, not only is the story advancing, but you're learning a lot more about the world. Even in some of the slower books later, where we've kind of slowed the story down, it's really so that we can continue to expand, learn more about the world, so it's something I very much appreciate. This book really does have that feel of adventure too, which is something you get in the first one, in my opinion, and is I think why, even though the early books are, there are definitely better books later on, and so that's why it's so hard to pick a favorite Wheel of Time book, and a lot of people, myself included, will usually like pick one of the first ones, but it's the early books just have that adventure feel, and then once we get deeper in, it's not that there's no action or adventure, there's all kinds of action and adventure that happens, but that kind of almost like quest feel. In the first book, they're going on their quest to get to the Eye of the World, and this one, the impetus of the book is they're going on a quest to recover the Horn of Val'ir, and that's really what we're looking at here. So the horn gets stolen very early on. It's not really a spoiler. That's the plot of the book, like I said. The horn gets stolen, and so that's where we're going on a quest to find it. Of course, it's not going to be that simple. There's going to be some problems along the way, and we're going to get to meet some different characters and see some different places. So this book introduces us to not only Kyran, but also is the first time that we see the Shan-Chan. And no matter how many times I read this, I always feel like the Shan-Chan don't come in until later. I think once again, I've read the whole story so many times, and even the final 3 books that didn't come out until later, obviously. I've even read those multiple times, but especially the books that Jordan wrote before he passed away. I read them so many times that the story is just one big thing to me. And so I always feel like that happens later. But those are 2 very important groups. We get to see them, we get to spend some more time in Tar Valon, and we learn quite a lot more, and then we start to get some of the smaller POV characters so that we can also see more. That's something Jordan does a lot later. Some people don't care for it. I always thought it was a really great idea. We haven't gotten to the point where we're really having throwaway POVs. All the POVs are relevant, but we do later in the books at some points get throwaway POVs that are just like, I really want you to see what's happening here. So I'm going to give you a random person so that you can witness it, have it be part of the story, and then we don't have to think about it anymore. And so it's something that I really enjoyed. But we have that adventure, and the first 3 books in general really do have kind of the way of doing it where we're going toward a goal and we're going to have some big showdown at the end. Now, all of the books, for the most part, have some sort of like big climax. Some of them are really big, some of them aren't. The first 3 books, though, really are kind of set up that way. So it's once again, it's weaning you in. There's still big things happening. Each book is going to give you a very complete ending that will feel very, very complete for the first 3. But we're always building toward what else is to come, because there's quite a lot more that's going to be coming. And so that's how we kind of start out with it. So this book, like I said, I think does a fantastic job moving things along, letting us get to know our characters, see how they kind of react when they're not necessarily on the run for their lives every second like they were in The Eye of the World. So we start to learn more, we start to branch out, see more, and I think it does a really, really great job with how it's handled, how it builds the world, and how it advances our characters. And so we start to get to see a little bit more. That, of course, will continue, and I already I can't wait to keep reading, because, you know, that's, for me at least, that's how you know a series is really, really great, at least to you, if it's something that you never get tired of, even when you've read it so many times. Something you still find enjoyment, find something new to just have a great time with every time you read it, and for me, that's definitely The Wheel of Time. So a couple of other non-spoiler things I want to mention, because I did continue doing audio, because I've read this story so many times and I've never done the audio. I'd always heard it was good, and I'm not really big on audio, so I figured doing audio for something I've read a bunch of times is probably going to work out. And I enjoyed it for the first book. It was good, but The Great Hunt, I feel like, really started to show how good the audio is, because we have a lot more we have more POVs, so we get like more of Kate Redding, more different characters, and we have different accents. Getting to hear the Kyrian and see the scenes that are set there was just great. The way the voices and the cadence and everything was, there were scenes where, once again, I read them so many times and they were good scenes, but they just, like, I literally found myself chuckling and laughing out loud at a few parts, because the way Michael Kramer would narrate it, it would just make it so much more comedic than even reading it, just because of the situation. Also, I have always wanted to hear how the Shan-Chan would sound. Always wanted to know, because, once again, there's so many, in some accents are somewhat, like, you can kind of figure out what they are. They're based on, you know, this or that, but a lot of the accents are more created, invented, maybe inspired by multiple things. So with the Shan-Chan, it's always said that they have a drawl, and they like kind of like drag everything out. And so I'd always wanted to hear what that would actually sound like. And a couple of specific of the early times especially, I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's fantastic. So this is definitely, I will never be the person who does primarily audio. I really love my physical media. And through the first book, I really enjoyed the listen of The Eye of the World, but I still felt like I was missing something until I picked up and finished it on physical. But with this one, I did the whole thing on audio, and I ended up having a little bit of extra time, so it made it easier, and I just had a blast with it. And I did have another little interview with Robert Jordan at the end, which was really cool too. But I had a lot of fun, and so I think I'm going to continue for now trying to do the audio if I have time to fit them in. I don't usually have a ton of time that I can just listen to an audiobook as well, so I've been trying to figure out where to get that all slotted. But I definitely understand now why everybody praises the audiobooks, because Michael Kramer and Kate Redding are both fantastic, and I'm really, really excited to keep going and continue with that experience. So let's talk some spoilers, because along with everything else we get, we start to get a lot more introduced, a lot more happening, and there's definitely some big things that happen. So let's chat a little bit more. So I briefly mentioned The Horn is Stolen, And for those who have read the book, of course, Matt's dagger is also stolen, so that's the other impetus. And I figured that's slightly more of a spoiler, slightly, so that's why I didn't mention that. But it's definitely the thing that pushes off. But we also get several interesting things. We learn a lot more about the Horn of Valor, which is interesting. And the horn is something that is going to be important later. And, obviously it's mentioned it needs to be present at the last battle. It calls these lost heroes. And we also find out that it can be used by either the light or the dark, depending on who blows on the horn. So there's a lot of cool stuff we get there. And we also get portal stones, which are really interesting as a mode of travel. And I think the way Jordan handles fast travel, because that's become, almost a trope in itself, and probably could be considered a trope. But it's one of those things like, oh, we need to get somewhere fast. Let's use our handy-dandy fast traveling. And so in the first book, we had the ways, which were very much shown are very fraught with danger, and not something that can necessarily be used. And those are not able to be used, and so portal stones kind of happen. And the first time, of course, with Rand happens by accident, but it just introduces that idea of alternate realities, kind of like mirror worlds, that can be a little bit different, which is something that if you don't want to dig into that too much, you certainly don't have to. It's not highly relevant to the plot, but it's just another one of those things that Jordan has included, even this early on, that gives so much for you to dig into. It's definitely an area you can go down the rabbit hole digging into what all is happening, what's possible with these mirror worlds. And we even see creatures in them that we see later appear with the Shan-Chan in the Grom. And so it's definitely a big, interesting thing to see. We also have the introduction of Selene, which I absolutely loved seeing people as they were going through and reading it in their comments, and so many people the first time just like, I don't think I trust this Selene person. Something's off about her. And so that kind of introduction where Selene, whom we find out at the end of the book is Lanfear, one of the Forsaken, who is trying to shepherd Rand into doing what she wants, and we find out that she still, loved him when he was Lews Therin, and is still trying to basically convince him to become with her, but of course not actually telling him who she is, just trying to win him that way. So starts to really explore that more, and even with the prologue, we get a meeting of Dark Friends, including some that seem to be important. We get more shown that the Black Aja is very much a real thing and is going to be relevant as it starts to be in this book. So we get more of a look in the shadow instead of it just being like random Dark Friends or Myrddraal or Trollocs. Those are all still there. We do even see another Drakkar as well, but we start to see there are a lot more powerful Dark Friends. We have Dark Aes Sedai, and we have a whole lot more coming, let me tell you as well. So there's a whole lot more of the Shadow Spawn that we'll get to see, and we'll definitely get to learn more as well. But getting more into that and just seeing what's going a little bit more in the bigger picture, very, very interesting. And so this starts to really show the world a little more. There is going to be more on that as well as you continue, of course. But we do get, brief looks at Ilion. And also, we have some mentions of Tyr, some mentions of Mayene, a little bit more about the Sea Folk Islands. There are definitely some things, even just very minor references there that are very much foreshadowing. There's so much. I commented a bit in the first book, and I did a video about Min's visions, which are straight up foreshadowing because it's prophecy. And there is just an unbelievable amount of foreshadowing in these early books. And it's always something that I really, really enjoy. There's usually no detail too small that might not come back up later in a fantastic way. So I mentioned as well in Cairhien, I really enjoyed, and we have Tom back, which I love Tom, and it's definitely with his being killed off, he does. We never actually see him die. We just kind of assume he did. I know a lot of people who are reading were thinking that you'd see him again, so maybe not that much of a surprise, but I really like Tom, so it's nice having Tom back. And also just kind of seeing how much more of a badass he is and how he's all in the politics game with Dazde Mar, the game of houses, and seeing all of those parts, as well as the other things that he does. where it doesn't even briefly show it, and that's the thing too. But it is, you know, confirmed in the book, straight up going and killing the king of Kyrian because he was mad that he ended up getting the woman, his like apprentice slash lover, killed. Like Tom's pretty badass. Tom is definitely a great character. Just all of that with I absolutely loved too. Seeing Rand, like, he doesn't want to be a lord. He doesn't want to play the great game. And just everything he does or doesn't do, like, oh, he's good. And, like, the scenes with Barthanes, or Barthanes is how they said it, in the audio, there's so... I commented in the first one. Maybe I will make a video of all of the words that I mispronounced now that I'm doing audio and finding out there are even more than I knew words that I mispronounced. So... Yeah. I still hold, in the audiobook, they pronounce the character Bridget as Birgitta, and no, that's too far. I still have to force myself to say Bridget, because I always just read it as Bridget, even though it's not spelled like Bridget, it's spelled like Bridget, but I'm not saying Birgitta. That's just, no, that's too much of a stretch of the way that word is spelled. Sorry. Also, everything that was AI was IE instead of just A, and that I already knew there was some ones like that, because like I heard, and granted, in the audio at least when they said Mazrim Tame, they didn't quite say Taim, which is apparently the correct pronunciation I've heard. It was more like Time, so it was a little less like specific, but some of those pronunciations, but. Anyway, where I was getting to, but just with all of those moments where he's just like trying to do the simplest thing, and they're just like, oh, you're very deep in the game, you're very good for one so young. And by trying to convince them that he's not a lord, it just makes them think he is all the more. And so those are some really fun moments, like I said, with the way Michael Kramer does the Kyrian voices, the cadence, the way they talk. It just made those scenes even more enjoyable. They were already really fun scenes, and scenes that I loved, but the audio just kind of gave me a new, even more fun perspective on some of those, so that was definitely great. So those were some big things I really enjoyed. The Shan-Chan is really interesting because we do only get a glimpse of the Shan-Chan at this point, but just already introducing, there's this completely different people who've come across in these big ships. They've got all kinds of different creatures. They've got all these different customs. They leash women who can channel and use them to fight. And so there's just so much introduced. But once again, we don't dip too far in. We don't just plunge inward. We kind of have this reveal. We see a bit about them and just learn more and about Arthur Hawkwing and his past and basically his descendants, all that kind of thing. So there's a lot more to come. We'll definitely learn a lot more of a lot of the history and the stuff around that, but this really does a great job introducing a lot of those concepts, and so those are some other things that I really enjoy about this book. Of course, another big showdown with Balsamon at the end, which is handled really well, and the fight being in the sky, which is also the prophecy, and the whole Varen and her whole thing, where she's just trying to like we're gonna nudge everything this way so that the prophecy is proceeded. Varen is just, because she's described as this like bookish, grandmotherly woman who's like zoning out all the time. But then she'll come back and she'll be like, wait, I'm paying attention. We're gonna be very shrewd here. So it was a fun character as well. So just a lot that happens here, like I said, in the book, but it sets up a lot more to come, and also I think has a really great ending. This is, like I said, it's one of the early books. It's still, these early books just hold a special place for me. I always absolutely love rereading these, and I enjoy my whole series reread, but it's just the early books too. They just remind me of when I was first starting the series. They've got still the younger characters on adventure before things start to get really complicated later on. And the way we're slowly just dipping our toe in the world of the Wheel of Time is just great. And I'm so excited to continue. Obviously, I know what happens. I've read the books. I'm just so excited to continue. And I'm really enjoying this reread. So I hope all of you, along with the reread, or even if you're just watching this video to watch the video or seeing it later, I hope you enjoyed this book and are hopefully continuing and going to be enjoying the rest of the books as well. But those are my thoughts on The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan, Book 2 in the Wheel of Time, we will be doing the Dragon Reborn for April. So if you're in there, make sure to check out. We'll get the channels built for them for the buddy read. And if you weren't before but want to jump in and join and either can catch up, or like if you're ahead and you're going to jump back and join us, more the merrier. Always happy to have people reading the Wheel of Time. So check the link in the description for the Wizardly Duo Discord if you want to check out anything about the buddy read. Join the discussions, even if you have read the whole thing too and just want to chat with people who are reading it. We would love to have you, and it's a lot of fun. Of course, give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.